to introduce Paul tonight. And for those that maybe don't know us, just a little bit about what we do. Paul wears a lot of hats. He does a lot of different things, you know, and so you know, most of you know him as a bus operator with Grand River Transit. He also drives truck, has driven truck. He also had a bike team, and we've also been in ministry where we were pastors for a number of years, and it was when we stepped out of doing that that he actually became a bus driver. So that's been quite a number of years ago. I think we're at, what are we at, 18?
Yeah.
18 years. So a number of years ago, we started a ministry. We call it Arise Now, and we do a few things. We do about 4 different things. So we go and we speak in different places. We've written some books, and we've got a book table here. I think a lot of you might have got some of the books when we release them digitally for our Blitz. And some of you might even have the copies. So if you're interested in any of those, the books are here. We do 2-minute wake-up calls, and I know that some of you listen to them on Facebook and YouTube. And if you're not familiar with them, and you're not on Facebook or YouTube, we do send them out on email too. So we have a sign-up sheet for anyone who may be interested in that. We're also on the radio in Brantford every Friday. We're on Minnie Moore's show, Arise Radio, with Minnie and Friends for her regular weekly guests, and that's on 2 stations in Brantford now, AM 1380, 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night, and the Christian station in Brantford, Arise Brantford FM 93.9. So if you don't find that you can, if you wanted to listen and you don't find that you can get the radio station, there's listen live links on our website, arisenow.ca. So having said that, you know, Paul loves a number of things. He loves to talk, and that's something that I always liked about him, even when I was dating, because I was very shy and quiet. And so he always had an ability to speak about everything and anything, anytime. And so that's one of the things that has always delighted my heart. Sometimes it's a little bit much, but
Well, you get that too.
that's one of the qualities I really appreciate about him. He loves driving, and you know, when we stepped out of ministry, he said, you know what? If I could drive a bus every day and I could preach every Sunday morning, I would just love that. You know, and so he does some of that, so that's great. And the other thing that he really loves is food. And so tonight we've combined the food aspect with the speaking aspect, and with the bus driver friends. You know what? And he might even share some lesson he learned on the seat of the bus, and I think you could probably all appreciate that tonight. So without further ado, why don't you come up, Paul, and you can share with the group what you have tonight.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Angie. That's I think the first time that Angie has ever introduced me to speak. So that's a real privilege and a pleasure to have my wife give an introduction. So we structured the evening in such a way that that we're going to eat first course, then I'm going to talk, and we're going to have dessert. And there's several reasons why we're going to have dessert after the talk. One of them is so that you have to stay and listen if you want dessert. If you don't want dessert, you can feel free to leave now. And another one is because I really love dessert and I love food. And so if I'm talking while we're waiting for dessert, it's going to help me keep it to a reasonable length. So to help in that, Phyllis came and said that Mac was hoping for just a 2-minute wake-up call. So it's if you watch our videos, you'll know that they're not all 2 minutes. So tonight it's going to be more than 2. But so to help in the time, so when we're in the radio studio, the producer is sitting in there with us, and we pre-record the shows, and so we do them in 20-minute segments. And so tonight is a 20-minute segment, and so at 10 minutes he goes like this, and then at 5 minutes he goes like this, and then at 2 minutes he goes like this, and then 1 minute. And so, you know, we're getting towards the end, and then we're like, okay, got a few things to say, so we start talking faster and faster. So anyway, so Angie is going to give me the signal here tonight at 10, 5, 2, and 1, and hopefully, you know, we can get it all in that 20 minutes. So, and then the third reason we're having dessert after the talk is because then after I'm done talking and you're eating dessert, hopefully it stimulates some conversation around the table where maybe we can share and ask some questions of each other or share some experiences that maybe connect with what I'm talking about. So as I said in the messages that were sent out to you, what we're going to do tonight is part of a larger talk that I do called 3 Healthy Habits. And this one is just one of the healthy habits. And I'm not going to tell you right off the top what it is, but you're going to discover soon. So there's a verse in Proverbs that I think of often. And you know, Proverbs was written by King Solomon. And King Solomon was widely known as, in his time and since, as the wisest man that ever lived. So he was full of wisdom. And it's written in the book of Proverbs. And so it is a wonderful book to read because you can just read a few verses at a time and meditate on them, and it will really instruct us well. So there's a verse in Proverbs chapter 4, starting in verse 20, where he says, and he's speaking to his son, he says, "My son, pay attention to my words. Listen closely to what I say. Keep them within your heart. Do not let them out of your sight." And he says about his words, "For they are life to those who find them, and health to a man's whole body." And I was like, wow. Solomon's wisdom. He's saying to his son, listen to what I say. Pay attention. Don't let it go. Keep it close. Keep thinking about it. It's going to be life to you if you find the truth in it. And it's going to actually not just be life, it's going to bring health to your whole body. And I'm like, wow. This is something to pay attention to. So tonight I'm going to refer to several verses out of the book of Proverbs, the wisdom of Solomon. And trust that as we ponder them, and in the days and weeks that come, as we meditate on the things that have been shared here tonight, that you will find that it is bringing life to you, and maybe even it is bringing health to your body. You know, we're talking about habits, and what are habits? Habits are things that after regular repetition in our life, they just become a normal part of who we are. And if we train our minds with wisdom and things that are guiding us in a right direction, then our habits can become healthy. And we can find life in it, and hopefully we can find that it actually brings health to our body. And so tonight, to start off, I'm going to tell a story. It is a lesson learned from the seat of my bus. It is not in my book, Lessons Learned on the Seat of My Bus, because it happened since the book was written. The book came out 4 years ago, actually in a few days. It was April 15th, 4 years ago, where we had the official release of that. And there's learning going on every day. As a bus driver, you would know that. It's an interesting job. We never know what a day brings. And so the lesson that I'm going to share with you, the story, comes from this sign. I've shared this in numerous locations, a bit about this sign, and every place I share it, there's always somebody in the crowd. Hopefully tonight it's not a bus driver. There's always somebody in the crowd when I explain what this sign is that goes, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." So what this is, on the back left corner of every bus, this sign is there. There was a law that came into the province of Ontario approximately 2005, and it was an effort to 2003, okay, to help transit buses stay on time. And so what happens is that a bus is in a bus bay off the road, off the main lane of traffic. When we put our signal on, hence the flashing light there, or the bright light, when I put my signal on in the bus, the cars coming up behind me are supposed to yield to the bus. And all the bus drivers said, "Amen, that happens all the time, right?" No, it's like they don't have the brake, they use the accelerator, right? Yeah. So, shortly after this law came into effect, without a lot of fanfare, there wasn't a great deal of publicity about it. I was a Route 8 at the corner of King and University heading towards Weaver. I was in the bus bay. I put my signal on and it was busy. The cars just kept flying by me and I'm trying to nose out. After about 10 cars, I got out. And just as I got out into the lane of traffic, an unmarked police car pulled in front of me, and he nabbed the last car in that line. And I know that he charged him with that because he came back to my bus and he says, if you give me a statement, I'll charge that guy. And I'm thinking, well, why do I got to give you a statement? I said, but if you want a statement, I'll give you one. And so I said, I'll write it up and give it to my supervisor, and he came and picked it up the next day, and so on and so forth. So we know that it does actually happen occasionally. People get charged. Maybe only once, but but this is part of our life as bus drivers. So fast forward to about 2 years ago. I'm on the Route 1. I'm heading towards Ottawa Street on River Road in front of Stanley Park Mall. There's a bus bay there that we almost always have to stop at. So I'm pulled in there. I'm loading my customers as they come on and are finding their seats. I close the doors. I put my signal on, and I'm waiting to merge. I'm like, oh, it's clear. I start to go. Well, there's a guy I thought had enough time. He thought he's going to get around me. So out and around me he comes, and he's honking his horn, and he's waving his fingers, and you know the routine, right? And so I'm like, okay, whatever. So we pull up to the red light at Ottawa and River, right side by side. It's a lovely day. His windows are down. My window is open, and I'm right beside him. I'm like, oh, this is great, you know. And so I'm right beside him, and he starts yelling at me. He's like, what do you think? You can just pull out wherever you want? And I'm thinking, well, actually, I think I can. And you know, very seldom do I engage in conversations with angry motorists. But in this case, for whatever reason, I just chose to say, in a calm voice, I just said, well, actually, sir, the rules of the road or the law, or whatever, however I phrased it, say that if I'm in a bus bay and I put my signal on, that you must yield to me. And you know what his response was? He said, no, not that. At least I didn't hear that, but anyway. He said, I drive for a living. I know the rules of the road. And I was like, wow. And I thought to myself, this conversation's over. I'm not going to get anywhere with this guy. So I didn't say another word. And the light turned green, and we went on our merry way.
Then you cried.
And I cried. No. But I got thinking about that incident. And I thought about it a lot since. And I thought, what is it when we are confronted with truth that rises up in us with a reaction like this guy that's like, I know what I'm doing. I got experience. Who are you to tell me the way that it is? And I could think at times in my life where that's the reaction I've had when I'm confronted with things. I drive for a living. I know the rules of the road. I had a couple thoughts immediately when this guy said this to me. The first one was, well, good luck with that excuse if a police officer pulls you over. And the second thought I had is from a verse in Proverbs. It's Proverbs 16, I believe it's verse 25. And it's this: there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. Now that may seem a bit harsh to say it leads to death, but you know what? If you don't know the rules of the road, like if you just think, well, I know everything and don't realize there's a new law that's came into effect, it could lead to a major crash and possibly death. There is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. So what is it in us that rises up in these moments that resists the correction or the moment of truth where someone is trying to help us realize there's something we don't know? And as I thought about it, I thought, I think there probably could be a number of factors, but I think it all boils down, in my experience, to one thing, and it's the word pride. Who are you to tell me what I don't think I need to know? Oh, 10, there we go. We're halfway there, people. Who are you to tell me that? This pride rises up in us. A few verses earlier in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18, we have this one. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Pride will never lead us to a good outcome. So what is the opposite of pride? Well, it's humility. You know, we see that numerous times in Scripture where in the New Testament there's an Old Testament verse quoted a couple times, and it says this: God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So the healthy habit I want us to reflect on tonight in these few minutes is what I call the habit of humility. And so I'm going to give you two definitions of humility that when I've heard them I heard them about 2 years ago, and I've been pondering them a lot since, and they have really blessed me and brought just great insight to me in this whole area of humility. And I want to share them with you and trust that they will help you get to a better understanding of that whole word humility. So the first definition of humility is this: humility is low self-preoccupation, not low self-esteem. You know, I grew up in a Mennonite community, and one of the things that Mennonites are often known for is we tend to put ourselves down. Oh, we're not very good at anything. Everybody's better than us. You know, I can do that okay, but there's lots of people who can do it better. Humility is low self-preoccupation, not low self-esteem. Just recently I saw a definition by a well-known author, C.S. Lewis, and it's akin to the definition I just shared with you, and he says, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Low self-preoccupation, not low self-esteem. So really, when we really understand what humility is, we come to the understanding of who God has created each one of us to be, what are the gifts that He's given you, and we live in the fullest potential of that, but we're not preoccupied with ourselves, so then the gifts that God has given us and who He's made you to be can be used to bless others. It's a beautiful picture. Because each one of us in this room is created in a unique way with special gifts that no one else can do just the way you do it. And so we know we don't want to live in this false humility where we put ourselves down and we don't realize who we are and who we're called to be. But we don't become preoccupied with ourselves so that our gifts then can be used in service and blessing to others. So that's definition number one. Definition number two came to me from a friend of mine named Frank, and we were chatting one day, and he says, I was thinking about humility, and what do you think about this definition? And he told it to me, and I said, wow, that is good. So this is what it is. Humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. I'll say it again. Humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. That guy at the intersection of Ottawa and River was confronted with the truth. There's a rule of the road that he's not obeying. Pride rose up in him and was like, who are you to tell me? I know what I'm doing, you know. Humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. So, about a year ago, Angie and I, we do some guest speaking in different churches. We were on our way on a Sunday morning to Drayton. And I was going to speak about this very subject. And so on the way there, we're driving through the countryside, and I'm a farm boy. You know, I love driving through the countryside, looking around, checking out all the farms and the buildings. And it was early in the season, so there wasn't crops. But, I mean, I just love the countryside. And so, oh my, we got to hurry up. So as I'm driving around, I'm looking around and we go by this building, and I think it was a church. I'm like, what's the name? You know, I'm driving this way. I'm like, what's the name on that church building over there? And there's a car coming the other way, and Angie's like, you might want to keep your eyes on the road. Now, how many of you like when your spouse gives you driving advice? Really does.
We heard your stories, Doug.
Something rises up in me, because this isn't the first time. Something rises up in me is like, I drive for a living, which I do. Why do you need to tell me? Anyway, but we're going to a place where I'm going to be talking about humility, is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. And I'm going to be preaching about that in a few minutes. And so I'm like, okay, I need to put into practice what I'm going to be saying. So in that moment I said, well, you know, honey,
Yes, honey.
that's really good advice. I think I should keep my eyes on that. You know, in Proverbs it says this, a gentle answer turns away wrath. So how we respond in those moments can either escalate or just de-escalate the situation. If we respond in humility, the outcome is much better for the relationship with the person and also in our heart, because we can look at ourselves honestly and say, is there something in what they're saying that I need to pay attention to? So real quickly, I want to tell you 3 things that you need to consider when you are confronted with something. First of all, there's the messenger. In Proverbs 15 verse 30, it says, light in the messenger's eyes brings joy to the heart. Good news gives health to the bones. Well, I have had some times where a messenger has brought me a message that I needed to hear, and I haven't really saw the light in their eyes because I had trouble with the messenger. I didn't even really hear the message, because sometimes the messenger who's bringing it is offensive to me. And I have found in my life that sometimes God, many times, God will use someone that I may have a struggle with to test the pride in my heart, whether or not I can hear the message of something that I need to hear. And I know, and sometimes when I have given a message to somebody that's been a bit challenging, and I've struggled, do I really want to say this? The reaction has been, the focus becomes on me, the messenger. You know how they always say, don't shoot the messenger? But we tend to focus on the messenger and get offended with the messenger, so we totally miss the message. So that's number 1, the messenger. The second part is the message. Can we really hear the message that is being delivered? You know, it says in that verse in Proverbs, right after the one I just quoted, verse 31, it says that he who heeds life-giving correction will be at home among the wise. Those who disregard discipline despise themselves. Did you hear that? If we disregard the discipline and the correction that's coming, it says in Proverbs that we actually despise ourselves. So adhering and listening and receiving the correction is a great blessing in our lives. Humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. So can we hear the message? Can we receive it? If we do, Proverbs tells us we'll be at home among the wise. It also tells us we will gain understanding. And the last thing, so there's the messenger, there's the message, and the last thing is the meaning. Many times, somebody says something to us, and we attach a whole different meaning to it than what they intended because of the insecurities or maybe the wounds and hurts in our lives. And so they may say something that you failed in this situation, but instead of hearing the message that there was a failure in that one situation, we hear the message, I am a failure. And so we react because we don't actually hear the message. We attach a different meaning to it because of the hurts and wounds in our heart. And you know, I have found in my journey as a follower of Jesus that the single greatest thing that has brought healing to the wounds and the hurts, and we all have them from life. Life you know, none of our families have been perfect, none of our relationships, none of our marriages have been perfect. There's hurts and wounds that come in all of those relationships. But as we get an understanding and a revelation of who God is and how much He loves us, and that there's nothing that you and I can do to earn that love, it's just His unconditional love that is lavished on us. It can bring such healing to those wounds and those hurts in our heart. So that we can know who we are, know the gifts that He's given us, not be preoccupied with that, so we can serve and live using those gifts and a blessing to others. And then, when we are confronted with the truth, humility is the ability to make changes when confronted with the truth. And so I just want to invite you into this journey with me. I am on this journey to walk in humility, to be teachable in each situation that I find myself in each day. I like to live with the attitude that I can learn something from everybody that I meet. It helps me to respect them as people. And you know, in our job as bus drivers, we meet a lot of people. But if we walk in humility, it causes us to treat people with respect, to realize that there is much to learn. None of us have it all together. We're on a journey. And I don't want to be that guy who comes to the end of life and is like, there was a way that I thought was right, but in the end it led to death. So I want to be open to learn, and I invite you into that journey with me, where we walk in humility. It's a healthy habit in our life, and we encounter each situation from the humility perspective. And I trust that you will find life in it. You'll find health even coming into your body as we're open to the correction and the teaching and the instruction that God wants to bring us in everyday life. I think I'm a wee bit over my time, and we are going to stop there. But I just want to say bless you all. Thank you so much for coming and sitting so well and listening. I was when we said we're going to do this. There's been or put out the invitation. There's a couple moments where I was like, what have I done? And but anyway, I'm thankful that you've all come and been a part of this. And we just want to pray God's blessing on each of you, and trust that as we move forward, each of us individually, and for those of us who work together, that we can be a blessing and an encouragement to each other, and that we can truly walk in the humility as I've described here tonight. So God bless each of you. Thank you.